My cousin was called selfish for dyeing her hair blonde before her sister's wedding. But her motive shocked everyone. I don't even know where to begin, and my hands are still shaking. Writing this, I feel like I just detonated a bomb in the middle of my own life, and I need an outside perspective before I completely lose my mind. I need to know if I did the right thing. To understand what happened, you have to understand my family. We live in Oaxaca, and if you know anything about life here, you know that tradition and appearances are everything. It's all about El Quedirán. What will people say? Our family isn't just close, it's a finely tuned machine built to project an image of perfect, respectable success. And my cousin's wedding was meant to be the pinnacle of that performance. We're talking a year of planning, a guest list that was basically a who's who of the city, and a budget that could probably fund a small village for a decade. It wasn't a party, it was a statement. The director of this whole production was my Aunt Nuria. She's the matriarch of this branch of the family, and her entire sense of self is tied up in her two daughters. They are her masterpieces, and their lives must be flawless. For her, this wedding was her magnum opus, the ultimate proof that she had raised perfect daughters who would have perfect marriages. Every choice, from the lace on the veil to the vintage of the wine, was personally vetted by her to ensure maximum social impact. Her eldest daughter, the bride, is one of an absolute sweetheart. She's kind and a little naive, and she was so genuinely in love with the idea of this wedding. The big white dress, the historic church, the mariachi band. She bought into the whole fantasy, and she was so happy that it was hard to see anything else. She trusted everyone to have her best interests at heart, especially her fiancé. And then there's the groom, Dario. To everyone else, he was the perfect catch. He's a successful architect, handsome, and could charm a snake out of its skin. He seemed totally on board with the grand, traditional wedding, always talking about the aesthetic and the vision. But I never trusted him. There was something cold behind his eyes, a flicker of something possessive and controlling that everyone else seemed to miss. The way he'd compliment my cousin's dress, but then gently suggest she wear something that showed less skin, or how he'd praise a decision she made before steering her toward the one he actually wanted. It always gave me a chill. Finally, there's my other cousin, Alma, the bride's younger sister and the designated problem child of the family. She's not a troublemaker in the traditional sense. She doesn't drink too much or cause loud scenes. Her rebellion is quieter, deeper. She's the one who went to university in another country, the one who questions things, the one who refuses to just smile and nod when something feels wrong. My family sees her as stubborn and difficult, but I've always seen it for what it is, a backbone of solid steel. She was the one crack in my aunt's perfect family portrait, and I knew this wedding was going to be her breaking point. The cracks started showing early on, and I swear to God, we all just painted right over them. It all started with Dario's obsession with the aesthetic. At first, it seemed like he was just a very involved groom, which everyone thought was sweet. But it wasn't sweet. It was surgical. He had opinions on everything, from the exact shade of cream for the tablecloths to the type of foliage used in the centerpieces. But it was his rules for the people that really set my teeth on edge. About 10 months before the wedding, all the bridesmaids got a group email from him. The subject line was Bridal Party Vision and Agreement. We all thought it was a joke. It was a PDF, a literal contract, that we were expected to sign. It had clauses about not getting any new visible tattoos, mandatory professional manicures in a pre-approved palette of 3 nude shades, and my personal favorite, a clause stating that we would make no drastic changes to personal appearance, including but not limited to hair color or style, within 6 months of the wedding. Who does that? It was Groomzilla on a level I didn't know existed. We laughed about it on our group chat, but it was a nervous laughter. When one of the other bridesmaids brought it up to my Aunt Nuria, she just waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, you know how architects are," she'd said with a tight smile. "Dario just has a vision, and it's so important that we all support him and my daughter. Let's just keep the peace. Don't make things difficult. Keep the peace." That became her mantra. Every time Dario crossed a line, Nuria was right there to smooth it over, repainting the cracks with a thick coat of "don't upset the groom." I watched Alma through all of this, and it was like watching a pot of water being brought to a slow, silent boil. For a year, she bit her tongue so hard I'm surprised it didn't bleed. I remember we were all at a dress fitting, and my cousin, the bride, came out in a gown she absolutely loved. It was beautiful, but it had a slightly lower back. I saw the light in her eyes, And then I saw Dario walk up behind her, look at her in the mirror, and say, "It's gorgeous, mi amor." But don't you think the other one was a little more elegant? More timeless? He was talking about a dress that was basically a turtleneck. He framed it as a suggestion, but the message was clear. My cousin's face fell, and she went back to the dressing room and chose his preference. I glanced over at Alma. She was standing in the corner staring at her phone, but her knuckles were white from gripping it so hard. Her jaw was a hard line. She didn't say a word, but her silence was screaming. That was her pattern. She wouldn't cause a scene. She'd just absorb it, this quiet, simmering rage. I could see the tally marks adding up behind her eyes. Every controlling suggestion from Dario, every dismissive platitude from her mother. It was all being filed away. Her patience was a long, slow-burning fuse, and I had a front-row seat, just waiting for the spark that would finally light it. I just had no idea how big the explosion was going to be. The rehearsal dinner was held in the courtyard of a boutique hotel, one of those places that looks like it was ripped from an expensive travel magazine. It was stunning, I'll give them that. Strings of fairy lights were draped between the stone arches, and the air was thick with the sweet smell of night-blooming jasmine and the faint, earthy scent of mezcal from the open bar. A solo guitarist played softly in the corner. It was the picture of serene, rustic elegance. But under the soft lights, my family was perched at their tables like a panel of judges, their smiles polite but their eyes sharp, ready to score every detail. And then Alma walked in. It was like a scene from a movie. The guitarist faltered, a chord hanging unfinished in the air. The polite hum of conversation didn't just quiet down, it stopped. Dead. She stood in the archway, and the warm, golden light of the courtyard hit her hair and turned it into a halo of pure, shocking white. It wasn't just blonde, it was a statement. A bright, icy platinum silver that seemed to suck all the color out of the room. It was beautiful, and it was an act of war. The first sound was a sharp, indrawn breath from my Aunt Nuria. She was on her feet before anyone else could even process what they were seeing. I saw her hand clutch the pearls at her throat. She didn't walk to Alma, she stalked. When she got to her, she didn't raise her voice. She lowered it into a venomous hiss that I could hear from my table 3 feet away. "What did you do?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fury. "You are trying to steal your sister's spotlight on her night." "How could you be so selfish?" A wave of whispers rippled through the guests. I saw Dario's face. The charming smile he always wore was gone, replaced by a mask of cold fury. He turned to his own mother, and I could just make out what he was muttering, his jaw tight. "The contract. She signed the goddamn contract." The whole room had turned on Alma. In the space of 30 seconds, she went from cousin and sister to a malicious, attention-seeking monster. And Alma? She just stood there, her chin held high, looking at her mother with eyes that were completely unreadable. She just took it. All of it. Without a single word. My blood was boiling. I had to get away before I said something, so I stood up and pretended to head for the bar. That's when I heard it. I ducked behind a large potted palm tree, my heart pounding, and saw Dario corner the wedding planner, a woman who looked like she was about to have a panic attack. He wasn't yelling. He was worse. He was calm, his voice low and cutting. "This is a logistical problem," he said, like he was discussing a misplaced flower arrangement. "For the photos tomorrow, put her in the back, behind the tallest groomsman. We can edit the color later if we have to, but I want her hidden until she fixes it." The planner nodded frantically, scribbling in her notebook. "Of course, Dario, whatever you—" He cut her off, and this is the moment that will be burned into my brain forever. He gestured vaguely in Alma's direction without even looking at her and said, with a dismissive little sigh, "Just keep her out of the main shots until she can fix her head." Fix her head, not her hair, her head, as if her entire being was a defective product that needed to be repaired and put back on the shelf. That was it for me. The spell was broken. In that single, dehumanizing moment, all the little red flags, all the nervous laughter about his vision, all the times we were told to keep the peace, it all solidified into a single horrifying truth. This wasn't about a wedding aesthetic. This was about control. And my sweet, naive cousin was about to hand her entire life over to a man who saw people as problems to be fixed. The point of no return wasn't just crossed, it was obliterated. It wasn't just anger. It was this weird, terrifying clarity that washed over me from behind that damn palm tree. My blood didn't just boil, it went cold. All the air left my lungs. Fix her head. In that moment, my loyalty, which had been stretched thin between keeping the peace and my gut feeling, just snapped. The internal debate was over. My loyalty wasn't to this wedding, to my aunt's reputation, or to the perfect picture everyone was trying to paint. It was to my cousins, both of them, the one being slowly suffocated and the one being treated like a broken toy. And the sickest part? I knew this was coming. Not exactly this, but something like it. This wasn't some spontaneous act of rebellion from Alma. It was a calculated detonation, and I was one of the few people who knew about the bomb. 3 days earlier, she'd called me, her voice low and tight. We met for coffee far away from our usual spots. She slid her phone across the table and just said, "Scroll." It was a treasure trove of screenshots, text threads between Dario and his groomsmen, where he referred to my sweet cousin as his project, and bragged about how he was taming her independent streak. Voice notes where he joked about her career being a cute little hobby she could drop after the kids came. And buried in there was a whole separate chat dedicated to Alma, whom they'd nicknamed the Final Boss, where Dario detailed his plans to get her in line with the family image. Her eyes were dark when she looked up at me. "I'm going to do something," she said. "I'm going to give him a reason to show everyone who he really is. I'm dyeing my hair. It's the perfect bait. It breaks his stupid contract and it's public. I need to see how he reacts when he's faced with something he can't control." She swore me to secrecy. My only job was to be there, to watch, and to be a witness for her sister when the time came. But standing there, hidden by the leaves, hearing him talk about fixing her head, I knew the original plan wasn't enough. Just being a witness wasn't going to cut it. Dario wasn't just going to react badly. He was going to spin it, twist it, and make Alma the villain, just like my aunt was already doing. He needed to be exposed, not just observed. Her plan had changed, and she didn't even know it yet. I was no longer a silent partner. My whole body moved on autopilot. I walked away from the palm tree, forcing a casual smile as I nodded at a great uncle. I headed inside toward the small salon off the main courtyard where they had a bar set up. And there it was, sitting on a console table, the restaurant's projector, aimed at a large, blank white wall, idly scrolling through a cheesy slideshow of the happy couple. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I was sure people could hear it. My hands were shaking, slick with a cold sweat, as I unplugged the venue's laptop and fumbled with the adapter for my phone. Every click of the port connecting felt like the slide of a bullet into a chamber. I pulled up the folder Alma had sent me, a little black and white icon labeled simply Evidence, the audio files, the screenshots of the texts. I queued them all up. My thumb hovered over the file that would cast the first stone. I found the small black remote on the table, its plastic cool and solid in my palm. This was it. I was no longer just a bridesmaid or a guest. I was an accomplice. And I was about to burn this whole perfect illusion to the ground. I had the remote in my hand, my thumb hovering over the play button, when a shadow fell over me. I didn't even have to look up. The scent of her expensive, cloying perfume hit me first. My Aunt Nuria. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. Her face, usually so composed, was a twisted mask of pure panic. "What do you think you are doing?" she hissed, her voice a low, frantic whisper that was somehow louder than a scream. She wasn't looking at me with concern. She was looking at me like I was a stain she needed to scrub out before the guests noticed. "You put that down right now. Are you trying to ruin this family? After everything I have worked for? Everything we have worked for?" Her grip tightened. "Your cousin is so happy. You are going to destroy her, all because her sister wants to throw a tantrum. You will not make a scene at this party. Do you hear me? You will not humiliate us." Us. She didn't say, "Humiliate your cousin," or "hurt the bride." She said, "Humiliate us." It was never about my cousin's happiness. It was about her reputation, her perfect performance, her magnum opus. I just stared at her, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Before I could even respond, the wedding planner, a tiny, bird-like woman with a headset and a clipboard, swooped in, her face pale. "Ma'am, please," she said, her voice shaking slightly, but firm. She was speaking to me, but her eyes kept flicking nervously toward Dario. "You can't use this equipment. This is private property. I'm going to have to ask you to step away, or I'll have to cut the power to this area." The whispers in the courtyard were starting to get louder. People were turning in their seats. The soft guitar music had stopped. The drama had shifted from Alma's hair to me, the crazy cousin clutching a remote control like a weapon. The planner took a step closer. "Seriously, I will call hotel security and have you removed. Don't do this." My aunt's pleading, the planner's threats. For a split second, I felt the world tilt. Was I insane? Was I about to blow up my whole life, my family, over this? My resolve wavered. My thumb eased off the button. And then I glanced down at my phone screen, which was still lit up, open to the evidence folder. And I saw it again. The final screenshot Alma had sent me, the one that made my stomach turn to ice. It was from the group chat with Dario and his groomsmen, dated 2 weeks ago. One of his friends had texted, "Still think you can get the little sister to fall in line?" Dario's reply was right below it, a smug, disgusting bubble of text. "Dude, it's a game at this point. I've got a bet with Javier. 5,000 pesos says I can break her before the wedding. She'll dye that hair back to something respectable. Just gotta apply the right kind of family pressure." And underneath, he'd sent a laughing emoji. Break her, not convince her, not persuade her. Break her. It wasn't about an aesthetic. It wasn't about a contract. It was a sport. My cousin, my fierce, brave, stubborn cousin, was just a game piece to him. And my other cousin, the sweet bride, was the prize he got for winning. Everything went quiet in my head. The whispers, my aunt's venom, the planner's panicked threats, it all faded into a dull, distant buzz. The only thing that was real was the cold, hard certainty that filled my chest. This wasn't a wedding. It was a closing of a cage, and I was standing there with the key. Ruining one night to save a lifetime? There wasn't a choice to make. There was only one path forward. My thumb was still pressed against the plastic, the little play icon feeling like a trigger under my skin. And for one awful, gut-wrenching second, my eyes slid past my aunt's furious face and found my other cousin, the bride. She wasn't looking at me or the commotion I was causing. She was looking at Alma, who was still standing alone near the entrance. And the expression on her face? It broke me. It wasn't anger. It was a deep, profound, soul-crushing hurt. A look of utter betrayal, aimed directly at her own sister. Her brow was furrowed in confusion, her lips slightly parted, and I could see the shimmer of tears in her eyes. She thought Alma had done this to her. She was seeing this not as an act of protection, but as the ultimate act of selfish jealousy on the one night that was supposed to be hers. A wave of nausea washed over me so strong, I thought I was going to be sick right there on the tile. What was I doing? My Aunt Nuria's words echoed in my head, suddenly sounding less like panicked threats and more like the absolute truth. "You are going to destroy her." Was this my place? To detonate a bomb in the middle of her life, in front of our entire family, without her permission? To rip away the fantasy she had been so happy in? I was about to shatter her heart into a million pieces, and she wouldn't even understand why. For a horrifying second, I saw the future. My cousin sobbing, the family in ruins, and me, the villain who couldn't just keep her mouth shut. The remote in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Maybe there was another way. A quieter way. I could talk to her tomorrow, show her the evidence in private. And then, my gaze shifted. It moved from my heartbroken cousin to her fiancé, Dario. He was standing near the bar, a drink in his hand, watching the whole scene unfold, and he was smiling. It wasn't a big, obvious grin. It was a small, smug, barely there curl of his lips, a look of pure, unadulterated victory. He was watching Alma get ostracized, watching his fiancée look at her own sister with pain and confusion, and he was enjoying it. He thought he'd won. He thought he had everyone perfectly arranged on his chessboard. He had successfully isolated the final boss, turning the family against her, all without getting a single drop of blood on his own hands. The image of that screenshot flashed in my mind, so vividly it was like it was burned onto the back of my eyelids. 5,000 pesos says I can break her before the wedding. He wasn't just controlling things. He was playing with people's lives for sport, for money, for ego. This wasn't just a groom with a toxic personality. This was a calculated predator who saw my family as a game. My doubt didn't just vanish. It evaporated in a flash of cold, white-hot rage. This wasn't about ruining one perfect day. This was about saving my cousin from a lifetime of being his project, of being slowly tamed and fixed until the bright, kind woman she was had been completely sanded down to fit his aesthetic. The quiet way, the private conversation tomorrow, that was a fantasy. He would just twist it. He would lie. He would charm his way out of it, just like he always did. No, the only way to kill a monster like that is in the light. This tremor of doubt before the quake was over. My hand was steady now. My resolve was iron. This was not ruining a wedding. It was a rescue mission. I picked up a champagne flute from a nearby table and tapped it with my nail. The small, clear clink, clink, clink cut through the tense murmuring. Every head in the courtyard swiveled toward me. My aunt's face was white with rage. Dario was still smiling that smug little smile, probably thinking I was about to make some pathetic, tearful toast. I met my cousin's heartbroken eyes for a fraction of a second, took a deep breath, and pressed play. There was no music, no video, just sound. Dario's voice, slick and confident, filled the stunned silence of the courtyard, echoing off the stone walls. It was from one of the voice notes. "She's a good girl," his voice crooned, the audio crystal clear. "A little headstrong, but she's trainable. You just have to make her think every good idea is hers." A collective gasp went through the crowd. My bride cousin's head snapped toward Dario, her face a mask of disbelief. Before anyone could speak, I switched the input. The projector flickered to life, splashing the contents of my phone onto the big white wall for everyone to see. It wasn't a slideshow of the happy couple anymore. It was a bright, glaring screenshot of his group chat. I scrolled slowly, deliberately. There were his jokes about my cousin's cute little hobby of a career. There was the list of rules for the wedding, including his explicit, "no blondes in the wedding party, it looks cheap" comment. And then I landed on the final image, the bet. I had circled his message in bright, angry red. 5,000 pesos says I can break her before the wedding. I let the image hang there, burning into the wall, into everyone's memory. The silence was absolute, heavier and more profound than any noise. It felt like the whole world had stopped breathing. I lowered the remote and finally spoke, my voice shaking but clear enough to carry across the courtyard. "She didn't dye her hair for attention," I said, looking right at Dario. "She dyed it so you'd finally show yours." What happened next felt like it was in slow motion. Dario's face crumbled, the charm melting away to reveal the panicked, ugly thing underneath. My Aunt Nuria made a choked sound and sank into her chair as if her bones had dissolved. But my cousin, the bride, was perfectly still. She stared at the wall, then at Dario, then at the wall again. Then she very slowly and deliberately reached up and untied the white silk bride-to-be sash from around her waist. She let it fall to the floor. She walked right up to Dario, looked him dead in the eye, and her voice was terrifyingly calm when she said, "We're done." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just turned her back on him and walked straight to Alma, who was still standing by the entrance, tears now streaming silently down her face. She took her sister's hand, and the two of them walked out of the courtyard together, leaving a crater where a wedding was supposed to be. The wedding was officially canceled that night. So now, here we are. My world is in flames. Our family is completely shattered, split right down the middle. Half of them, mostly the younger cousins and a few aunts who never liked Dario anyway, are calling me a hero. They're sending me messages, telling me I saved my cousin from a miserable life. But the other half, led by my absolutely apoplectic Aunt Nuria, see me as a monster. She's telling everyone I'm a jealous, dramatic saboteur who couldn't stand to see her family happy and ruined a perfectly good union over a few stupid jokes. The shunning is intense. I'm being iced out of conversations, uninvited to family dinners. My bride cousin is devastated, obviously, but she's standing by her decision. She and Alma are together, closer than they've ever been, trying to piece things back together. She thanked me, but her heart is broken, and I'm the one who swung the hammer. So, Reddit, I have to ask. Aida for blowing up my cousin's rehearsal dinner to expose her fiancé, even though I knew it would detonate our entire family?